Thank you. It's my pleasure to welcome you to the third session of our webinar series for the Reproductive Education and Adolescent Community Health Program in the Eastern Caribbean. And before we begin, allow me to share a few housekeeping reminders. As you've just heard, the session is being recorded. Feel free to introduce yourself briefly in the chat. And you may submit your questions at any time using the Q&A feature or the chat feature. We will follow through the presentation and then leave some time for questions and answers at the end and address as many questions as time permits. Kindly keep your microphones muted unless you're invited to speak. That just helps with the recording and all our participants. We also encourage you to participate actively in any polls, discussions, activities facilitated during the session. Watch for some links in the chat. We will be posting both a link to the Teen Brains past webinars, as well as a link to the Center for Parent and Teen Communications. Closer to the end of the webinar, we'll be able to put up a link to our next webinar on August 4th, and we'll have a bit of information on that as well. To those of you who participated in the previous webinars on the Teen Brain, thanks for returning and continuing this important journey with us and for your commitment to adolescent health and well-being. To those joining us for the first time this afternoon, we extend a very warm welcome and we're delighted to have you with us. We hope tonight's session will be informative, engaging, and beneficial to your work with adolescents and young people, regardless of your background. And thanks, I'm seeing a bunch of postings in the chat. Very nice to see. The REACH project, I'll give you a bit of a background on us. It's a regional initiative aimed at strengthening adolescent health by promoting meaningful youth engagement, improving access to quality adolescent-friendly health services, including sexual and reproductive health, and ensuring young people have a voice in shaping the programs and policies that affect their lives. Projects being implemented in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, St. Lucia, Grenada, and Dominica. It's in partnership with Alinea International, CTEC, which is the Caribbean Technical Assistance and Education Center for Health, and the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States Commission. Through this webinar series, we're creating a space to learn, exchange experiences, explore practical, evidence-based approaches that can contribute to healthier and more supportive environments for adolescents throughout the region. So it's now my pleasure to introduce this evening our presenter, Dr. Kenneth Ginsburg. So Dr. Ginsburg is as you saw on the first slide, actually. I've got to make this larger. Dr. Kenneth Ginsburg is a professor of pediatrics and specialist in adolescent medicine at the Perelman School of Medicine, University of Pennsylvania, and the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. He also directs health services at Covenant House, Pennsylvania, supporting youth experiencing homelessness. Dr. Ginsburg practices social adolescent medicine, which means he offers service with special attention to prevention and recognizing the social context, stressors, and undermining forces that affect both physical and emotional health. For more than 35 years, his clinical work and his research has focused on helping young people develop solutions and guiding adolescents to better support them. As well, he's the founding director of the Center for Parent and Teen Communications, and we'll have a link for you in the chat related to that work. The center works with influencers to empower parents with skill sets and position them to guide their teens to become their best selves. Dr. Ginsburg is also an author of several books, including Building Resilience with Children and Teens and Congrats, You're Having a Teen. His multimedia toolkit, Reaching Teens, offers strengths-based, trauma-sensitive, resilience-building communication strategies for professionals serving young people. And REACH project is delighted to be adapting and building from this strengths-based approach in Reaching Teens. So thank you so much, and please join me in giving Dr. Kenneth Ginsburg another very warm REACH welcome. And over to you.
Thank you so much. What a joy and what a privilege it is to be speaking to you this evening. We're going to be talking about parenting, But really, we're talking about young people and how parents and caregivers and other caring adults can raise our youth so that they're going to be authentically successful, emotionally healthy, and prepared to thrive. Now, talking about parenting with anybody is tough, right? Because parenting is such a deeply personal thing. We think about parenting and we always think about our own parents, and we think about parenting, we always imagine how we're doing the best we can, and sometimes it seems like that's not good enough. That is true for all of us. I just want to tell you that I come to this talk with humility. I wish I could be with you. I wish I could wrestle with you and understand that anything I say has to be put into place in your community and in your family. And that nobody from very far away in another country can tell you what's right for your community. So what I'm hoping is that I'm going to give you a wide array of ideas about parenting and how parents can be effective. And then you can really do the work within your communities about how to literally bring it home. So let's begin with a simple question or comment. You have to know how much you matter. And parents now have to know how much they matter. And you begin by asking that and going, why is it a question that parents even matter? And that's the problem. That's the beginning of the problem. When you're raising a baby and you're watching your toddler and keeping them out of the street, you know how much you matter. When you're teaching them how to talk, you know how much you matter. And then suddenly people become teenagers and people wonder if they still can make a difference in their lives. And the answer is yes, yes, perhaps more than ever. And then you have to ask yourself, why is this even a question? And part of it is that there's a myth about adolescence, things that are just not true, that they think they're invincible, not true, that they're inherently risky, not true. And above all, what's not true is that they don't like their parents and don't care what adults think. That is the furthest thing from the truth. Parents matter so much, even if sometimes you're pushed away, which we're going to talk about in a moment, right? The bottom line is human connection is what offers the protection and sense of belonging that allows positive development to occur. And positive youth development is about wisely applied adult guidance. We honor teenagers as the experts in their own lives. We know that only they know the journeys they navigate. But that doesn't mean they don't need us. Quite to the contrary, they're always going to need our wisdom and our guidance, and they yearn for it. We serve as the scaffolding as they build their lives and develop to their potential. So why do they push us away sometimes? Because it can be sometimes hard to have an adolescent. It's because their job is to learn how to be independent, right? That's their job. So think of them as birds in a nest. And when you're little and you bring them those big juicy worms, they're just like, thank you. And then adolescence happens and something inside their brain says, wait, I'm going to have to fly from this nest occasionally or eventually. So what happens? You look at those birds bringing those big juicy worms they used to appreciate so much, and then you become embarrassed by the way they breathe, and you say, I don't need those worms, I can get them myself. And you look at that warm, fluffy nest, and you begin imagining it as prickly, and you begin saying, I couldn't stay here 1 minute longer. Hear me clearly. Adolescents pushing their parents away is not because they don't love their parents. It's because they love them so much that it hurts. They have relied on them. They have loved the nest that has been built. They have appreciated what has been given to them. And then they imagine that they're going to have to do life without them. And it terrifies them. So they go through a temporary process of pushing parents away. But if we play our cards right, they'll understand the most important lesson of humanity. There's no such thing as independence. We strive to be interdependent. We need each other. And it is only when our children learn that they can flap their wings that they choose to have you join them. So, when we're thinking about adolescence, let's move away from that avoiding risk mentality and begin thinking about thriving. So how are we going to define success for all young people? You know, you might begin by saying, I want my children to be happy. Happiness is a fleeting experience. You want your kid to be happy, give them a cookie. What you want is for them to have a sense of meaning and purpose, to be in relationships with other people, to be creative, to be innovative, to honor other people's opinions, and indeed to be resilient, right? So when you begin looking at your child in front of you, whether they are an 8-year-old or a 17-year-old, I want you to imagine the 35-year-old. Because when you do that, it takes pressure off the moment, because you're not just thinking about how they're performing, what they're doing, what they're saying, are they smiling? No, you're thinking, who is my child going to become? And what are the character strengths that I need to put in place for them to be successful? So imagine the 35-year-old, and now you know. You care about the relationships, you care about who they are and how they interact with the world. Another way of looking at it is think about the second job they're going to apply for. We focus so much on what happens to launch our kids and what it's going to look like when they're ready to launch. Instead, don't think about their first boss or their school that they might go to when they leave your home. Instead, think, what is that second boss going to ask the first boss? When they call up and say, tell me, should I hire this young woman? They're not going to say, was she captain of the cheerleaders in high school? No, they're not going to even say, what were her grades? They're going to say, does she get along with other people? Does she learn on the job? Does she grow? Is she collaborative? Think about these things and you know what traits you're trying to foster. Now, we also want to know how to optimize our engagement and impact. What I'm about to teach in about the next 5 to 6 minutes is based on 60 years of research. There is nothing we know more about in parenting than what I'm about to teach you. Okay? So we know that it's about promoting the kind of relationships and positive behaviors that come from certain kind of parent-teen interactions. It's about two forces, two what seem like opposing, but they're not opposing at all forces. One is love and warmth. What's the difference in love and warmth? Love is what you feel, but it only counts if your kid knows you feel it. That's what warmth is. And then we also need to monitor our kids. We need to keep them safe. And this is the balancing act of parenting. You want to love, but you also need to protect. And when you have these two opposing forces, you begin defining what's called parenting style. So on the one side, again, is love and warmth, and then this fancy term called responsiveness. Responsiveness is fancy talk for flexibility, meaning you're going to allow your child to develop, and rather than having super rigid rules, you're going to let them stretch into safe territory. And on the other side is monitoring rules and boundaries. When you have these two opposing themes, you have warmth on one side, rules on another, and now you have 4 parenting styles. Down here is lots of rules and no warmth. What does this look like? You'll do what I say. Why? Because I said so. While you're under my roof, you'll follow my rules. And my father's favorite, which letter in the word no can you not spell, young man? This is called authoritarian parenting. So the parents care about their kids, but they're very strict without any warmth. How do these kids turn out? Angels. These are the kids who will follow their parents in the grocery store line and never pluck a grape. They will just be as polite as can be. But what happens when the parents aren't watching? Or what happens when the kids reach adolescence? These kids who were angels as children behave like angels in front of their parents, but not when their parents aren't watching. They rebel. And we know for a fact that they engage in quite a few risk behaviors, but they do not talk to their parents about it for reasons we're going to talk about in a minute, right? That is the way so many people were raised, and then they choose to go opposite. Lots of warmth, no rules, right? It's called permissive parenting. This is, darling, I love you so much. I didn't have a good relationship with my dad, so I want you to think of me as like your friend. Call me Ken. And I'm going to spend a lot of good time with you. I'm going to teach you values, but you're going to decide what to do. I trust you. Lots of warmth, highlighting relationship, very few rules. How do these kids turn out? They engage in a lot of risky behaviors because they believe that they have their parents' permission to do so, and they are highly anxious because their parents have treated them like friends, and adolescents worry about losing their friends all the time. If you ask an adolescent, what do you want your parents to be like? They're all going to say, just like my friends. Not really, though, because they're living in fear of losing their friends, and they should never fear losing you. And when you get into the friendship box, their love feels conditional, and for reasons I'm about to tell you, they don't tell you what's going on in their lives. The worst kind of parenting, which there's a zero chance any of you are on this call because you don't come to these calls, which is no rules, no warmth. Kids will be kids, you know? If they burn down the barn, I'll get a hose. What do these kids do? They burn down the barn because it's the only way they get their parents' attention. So what is the correct kind of parenting according to 60 years of research? Rules and warmth. Darling, I love you so much, right? But I'm not your friend. I'm your dad, and that's way better for you. I'm going to let you make mistakes because people do. I'm going to stand by your side when you do. But for the things that matter, the things that will compromise your safety or where your values are not acceptable, you will do what I say. That is called balanced parenting. These kids have lower rates of drug use, bullying, violence, later sexual activity, and they're protected when they do. My own research, half as likely to be in a car crash. In every measure, these kids do best. Balance. Why? Because it's about monitoring. We used to think that monitoring was about asking, where are you going to go? Who are you going to be with? What are you going to do? Now we understand that monitoring is what kids choose to tell their parents. And what they choose to tell their parents is based on the relationship they have and what answer they're going to get. So, are you going to go, and if you want to test whether something might be safe or not safe, are you going to ask the authoritarian parent? No, because you already know what the answer is. It's no. Are you going to go to the permissive parent to ask for boundaries? No, because you already know what the answer is. It's yes, do it. I trust you. Are you going to go to the disengaged parent? No. You're going to go to the parent who gets involved. You're not going to go to the disengaged parent because you know the answer is whatever you want. You know, kids will be kids. You're going to go to the parent who only gets involved when it's a matter of safety or morality. The balanced parents know the most by far, and therefore they are engaged in their kids' lives and can monitor them. I made a translation of balanced parenting to try to just explain it to you in this paragraph. This is all, and one of my books goes into nothing but this. I choose to be a lighthouse parent, a stable force on the shoreline from which my child can measure themselves against, role modeling. I'll send my signals in a way they will choose to trust, effective communication. I'll look down at the rocks to be sure they don't crash against them, protection. I'll look into the waves and trust they'll learn to ride them, trust and protection, but I'm committed to prepare them to do so, preparation. I'll remain a source of light they can seek whenever they need a safe and secure return. That's your bottom line. Your kids need to know that when times are rough, they can come back to you now or in 40 years. So how are we going to work with our kids? We're going to build on their existing strengths, right? Because again, don't believe the lies that they don't care what you think, even if that's what they're saying to you, right? They care so much what you think. And so your greatest impact is absolutely seeing all that is good and right in them. What are we going to do? We're going to look at their lives. And what's so easy in parenting is to spend all the time on the don'ts. You look at what your kids are doing wrong and you correct them. Don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. It doesn't work. It pushes them towards rebellion. What do you want to do? You want to explain to them why the don'ts exist, because you know all that is good and right in them. You know their strengths, you know their potential, and the reason you're giving them don'ts is so that all that is good and right will thrive. You want them to build on their strengths and thrive. What are the strengths? You know your child, right? But things like resilience, integrity, compassion, tenacity, humor, humility, insight, sense of gratitude, fairness, kindness. Stop looking for the problems. Begin looking for the strengths. That is the way to prevent the problems. Now let's talk about resilience. In its simplest terms, resilience is about overcoming adversity. It's about bouncing back. It's about surviving difficult times. But if you have the skill sets to be able to survive difficult times, you most certainly know how to thrive in the best of times. This is my model that I put out in the original book, Building Resilience in Children and Teens. And I'm just going to give it in 1 minute. It's a web of different C's. For a human being to thrive, they have to have confidence. But confidence doesn't come from just showering praise. You're so good, you're so special, look at you, right? It comes from them knowing they have skills and they are noticing what they have and committed to building what they don't have. It is their competencies that build confidence. Human connection. That's all that it's about. Character. Think of character as, what would you do if no one was watching? Contribution. Knowing you have a sense of meaning and purpose in the world and that you are committed to your community and to your family. When kids are surrounded by people who they're serving, those people will say thank yous, and that child will be surrounded by gratitude instead of condemnation. That will lift them up, right? And then coping. What we want is for kids, everything you fear, especially in adolescence, whether it's sex or drugs or cutting or bullying, all of it isn't because kids are bad, it's because they're trying to hide their pain. And telling kids what not to do doesn't work. What works is starting at a very young age, helping kids develop a wide repertoire of positive coping strategies. And the last one is control. Kids either believe that you are controlling them or they believe you are guiding them. If your kids believe you are controlling them, they will rebel. If your kids see you as a guide, they will never tire of your presence, and they will invite you in their lives for decades to come. The bottom line of building resilience is that young people will be more resilient when the important adults in their lives believe in them without condition and hold them to high expectations. Because young people respond to the expectations we set for them. Those expectations are not about grades. They're not about performance. They're about being a good human, right? The power of the protective power of unconditional love cannot be overstated. We're going to talk about this at the end, but the bottom line is your child is growing up and determining whether they are worthy of making the right decisions, worthy of being surrounded by love. And when a parent's love is conditional, they're never going to feel worthy. You see, love counts most when you don't like a behavior. This is actually my favorite picture of childhood. This is the one that is sitting by my desk, right? This is my daughter Talia, who, by the way, is a adolescent trauma therapist now, right? But this is her at 2.5 years old. It is Valentine's Day, and I have given both of my girls, I have identical girls, I've given both of them a chocolate rose and my wife a chocolate rose. Talia ate hers and she thought it was delicious. She thought it was so good that she would eat my wife's as well, but was pretty sure that if I couldn't see her doing it, it was going to be okay, right? So she's hiding on the step behind the stairs. I don't see my daddy, he doesn't see me, right? This is a moment where it would be so easy to condemn this child, to punish this child. But this is the same little girl who was walking ants out of the kitchen to make sure they could be with their aunt grandmas. She is good to her core. And rather than condemning her, We could have a conversation about fairness and about how mommy wanted the chocolate rose too. There are ways to do it. And so it's so easy to be unconditional when your kid is perfect, but I've never met a perfect child. And it counts most actually when you're not liking their behavior. Back to resilience. Resilience is partly how we think. Remember that we are all prey. And depending on where your ancestors came from, you're either mostly terrified of a wolf, a bear, a tiger, right? And if you don't believe me, think about this. Think about what happens to your body when you're stressed. The first thing you do is you get butterflies. You know why? Because that is the blood rushing to your butt so you can jump and your legs so you can run. That's what butterflies are, that whoosh feeling. That's the single coolest medical fact I know. Right? Then you sweat when you're running. Your pupils get big so you can jump over the log. Your heart beats fast, you breathe fast. But the most important point I'm trying to make is you can't think clearly. Why? Because you're not supposed to turn to the tiger and say, hey, can we work it out? And you can't feel fully when you're under a tiger attack because you're not supposed to turn to the head of the wolf pack and say like, hey, help me understand why you want to eat me. Can I understand your perspective? Hear me clearly. When we feel like we're under attack, we cannot draw from the two most important elements of human resilience, which is the ability to feel and the ability to think. So resilience begins with being able to say to yourself, am I under attack? Am I really in danger? Or is this just something happening in my head, right? Because if you can bring yourself back down, right? If it's a real tiger, run, don't be thinking. But if you can bring yourself down to something that just feels like a tiger, it can make quite a difference. Now, this is actually the scariest picture in all of humanity. Check it out. It's not the tiger you can see, it's the tiger you can't see. It's right in the middle there, the tiger lurking in the grass. This is uncertainty. And the answer to uncertainty is to mow the grass. Wherever you can, expose the tigers. Wherever you can, don't let a mystery stand there when you can begin to figure it out. Uncertainty is likely a major driver of human harm. And if we were giving a talk about trauma, we would focus on this deeply. Folks, resilience is not invulnerability. You know, there isn't a human being who's been born who's invulnerable. And in fact, sometimes it's our vulnerability that is our greatest strength. But kids don't know that. And unless we speak to them with the language of resilience, which we're going to talk later, people are ashamed with their very superpowers. You're talking to a guy who's almost 65, best life you can imagine, and who wanted to die at 17, every day of 17. And my superpowers were not yet understood by me. My ability to think, my ability to feel, and I just wanted to turn them off. And people told me I felt too deeply, thought too much. Not what I needed to hear. I needed someone to bring out my powers. What are we going to do? We're going to offer co-regulation and support to increase the window of tolerable stress in our children. What is tolerable stress? You know, there's good stress, which activates you to think, toxic stress, which no one should have, but mostly we have tolerable stress, meaning we can handle it under the right circumstances with the right support. That right support is called co-regulation, right? So think about it. There's turbulence on a plane. Who do you turn to? Do you turn to the guy sitting next to you? No, because you're going to be looking at him and you're going to be terrified. You look at someone who has credibility, who you trust their judgment. And in this case, you look at the flight attendant, and if they're still serving snack mix, you're chill and you get to calm. All right? Calmness, even amidst chaos. That's what co-regulation is. And then by offering our children our calm, whether they're 2 years old or 17 years old, they can begin developing their skills of self-regulation. So if you're a child or an adolescent in crisis, then, or just a child too young to be able to think, you want to look like this mama duck. Hey kids, I gotcha. I'm handling the waves, just follow me. But as your kid ages and becomes an adolescent, if you look like this all the time, you look ridiculous. Why? because your kid knows that life looks more like this. And what co-regulation begins to look like with our children during adolescence, or I work with youth in crisis as they're coming down from crisis, it looks like this. You're still the duck floating on the water, but only because you're paddling like crazy. And when we actually show our kids, this is what we do, this is how I paddle, we are much better co-regulators, and we are able to prepare our children for real life. We want to understand brain development, because if we understand brain development, and I know that you've had a talk on this recently, but if we understand brain development, it's key to our ability to co-regulate. You see, in an adolescent, the emotional centers develop first. In this picture, that's basically the green and the orange in the middle. They develop first, but that doesn't mean that the thinking part of the brain isn't on. It just means that the emotional parts are brilliant, right? Adolescents are incredibly intuitive. They can read people like they've never have before and probably never will again. They're highly intuitive. But when the reactive centers of the brain, the emotional centers, are activated, the thinking centers are suppressed. You can't think. So the question is, which part of your child's brain will you turn on? So, next, this is the puzzle of adolescence. It's called Who Am I? Right? And the new knowledge, kids always are expanding towards the edges of new knowledge, always. In fact, in their brains, they have reward centers that when they experience something new, their brain goes, whoa, and get really happy, right? What is the adult job? Knowing that kids are natural explorers, they're always going to go towards the edges. It's creating clear boundaries, because kids' brains will keep going, but if we create clear boundaries beyond which the kid cannot stray, they're still going to get excited by going to the edges. Why golden margins at the edges? Because we want the kids to go to the edge of existing knowledge in safe territory and still go, whoa. Hear me clearly. Does adolescent risk exist? Yes, when adults don't do their job. When adults do their job of creating clear boundaries and golden opportunities, the kids turn out okay. Now, how do we communicate with kids on a daily basis? When we speak in hot communication, highly emotional, demands, lecturing, yelling, condescension, I know better because I'm an adult, you are activating the emotional parts of their brain and they can't think. But if you know how to co-regulate with your child, to remain calm, to talk in a way that honors them as the experts in their own life, and you take your role as a guide who has more wisdom and experience, you don't lecture, you guide. You don't tell or demand, you share your thoughts and invite them to be safe. When you do this, and you're joyful, but not exuberant, over-the-top communication, kids can't think, they're highly emotional, and they make mistakes. On the other hand, when we are calm and loving with cold communication, you can speak to your child and they will think as clearly as a 40-year-old. This is something I'm presenting to you now. The Reaching Teens Toolkit teaches you how to do it. I'll give you other resources, but when you know how to do this, things change. See, adolescence offers us the opportunity to reshape the human brain. So the adolescent brain is plastic, meaning is changing all the time. Development is happening very quickly. And most development happens from 0 to 3. And then you continue to develop in childhood, and then it explodes again during adolescence, which is an amazing opportunity to reshape the brain for the better, right? New pathways can be built, and old pathways that are not used can become pruned away. This is the human brain. This is a good experience. This is a bad experience. But no matter what, you have an experience. And when that experience happens, you build a pathway. The nerves get organized so that you can more efficiently make a decision without having to think over and over again. I've been here before. I know what to do. The pathway is laid out. And when you have that pathway and you've had an experience over and over, it looks like this. But when it keeps happening over and over again, it becomes even more solid. Now, what can happen if that is not a good pathway? Those are old memories. Those are trauma. Those are terrible things that happen to a child you're working with. What do we want to do? We want to create a new pathway. Something that is filled with love and filled with guidance, filled with alternatives, and you do it over and over again, and the child will have a new brain pathway. And in time, that other pathway will begin getting pruned away. There might be memories of the past trauma, but they will be distant. They might get activated sometimes, but they will be distant. Now let's talk about the language of resilience, making people a little bit more comfortable with discomfort. You know, in the perfect world, we protect our kids from everything, but that's not possible. So what we want to do instead is prepare them. That is the best protection we can offer. And with our words, we're telling kids what we think. Do we see them as fragile, as incapable, or as strong and resilient? And when we jump in with solutions, we're denying our children the space to arrive at their own. On the other hand, when we listen to them and we act as a sounding board, we're letting them think. When our frustrations or worries drive our words, they communicate hopelessness or fear. But when we have calm, settled presence, they begin having calm, settled minds that allow them best to problem solve. I'm going to give you a bunch of examples. And what I want you to notice in all of them is that there's a recipe, right? Feelings are validated. Problem is acknowledged as real. It's neither magnified nor minimized. Sensitivity is good. It might be uncomfortable, but it's a strength to be developed. There's always an assumption that the young person is developing in front of us, and their thoughts and opinions are elicited. We're offering our presence and our guidance. We're co-regulating, but we're not solving their problems for them. So when you want to get a kid to think, the kiss of death of human communication is to begin a sentence with, I think. That's going to make a kid rebel. Start always with, what do you think? I'm here to listen. Never tell any kid they're too young to understand. The whole joy of human communication is starting where they're at. So we start with, tell me what you understand. About problem solving. Let me help you with that communicates, I don't think you can do it on your own. So instead, how do you think you could solve this problem? Don't tell people what they can't do. Use the power of the word yet. You haven't yet been able to. When it comes to getting started, so often we say to kids, just get started, you'll figure it out. It's not enough information. Tell kids the truth. Take one step at a time, and when you've accomplished something small, you'll prove you can succeed and feel less overwhelmed. When a kid is neurodivergent, right, what we want to do is avoid the things that make them feel odd. Different, yes. Odd, never. So we don't want to say, why can't you be like everyone else? Say, I love your unique perspective on life. Don't do people think that we're helping kids feel normal by saying that I couldn't tell that you were different. That reinforces that they should hide their difference. Instead, you're valued for who you are, and I admire who you're becoming. About a bad experience. Don't tell people it's not that bad. It may be. Say, this must feel awful for you. In time, it'll hurt less, and you may be stronger from the experience. Don't tell kids we'll protect them. Tell them that they'll get through it with us by their side. About emotional distress. I already shared this piece with you when it was about me, right? This is my childhood, being told I'm too sensitive and I worry too much. These are the reasons I'm here today, folks. It is because of my sensitivity, right? How about this? The best thing about you is how much you care. Your challenge in life is going to be to learn how to care without hurting too much inside. It's great to think as much as you do. Your challenge is to remind yourself you'll be able to handle this. You just have to think through a solution. It might also help to remind yourself you'll get through it. About help seeking. For so long, we've communicated that strength is about handling it. A strong person handles it. Just get past it. Just move on. This is going to prevent people from help seeking. And it is only through human communication that we can lift each other up. Right? How about this? A strong person learns how to reach out to others. Your own strength and the support you'll get from those who care about you will help you heal. Sometimes the strongest thing a person can do is to turn to another human being or to seek professional help. You want to change one word in your vocabulary when you're talking to your child or counseling a teen you're taking care of? Don't tell people what they need. That implies a state of brokenness and emptiness. Instead, tell them what they deserve, right? They deserve to feel better. Most critically, in terms of human development, stop with the no's. No is so easy. It's so authoritarian. And from a parenting point of view, it doesn't help development. How about this? I don't think you're ready. Tell me what you think you need to do to show me you're ready. That's going to motivate the kid to do better, which is your goal. To stretch as they prove to you they can handle it. Now let's talk about some stress management skills, right? Stress management is about learning to cope in a positive way with life's inevitable stressors. And make no mistake about it, people who can choose positive coping strategies gain control over their life. One of those C's. One of the biggest mistakes we've made, at least in the US with this generation, is making kids think they're supposed to be happy all the time. And then we wonder why they're anxious. They're anxious because they're not Instagram happy. People aren't supposed to be happy all the time. If life is hard, you're supposed to experience it. If you break up with your boyfriend, you should be upset, right? Stress is a normal part of life. What defines mental health is not happiness, it's what you do when you are stressed. And, when people are uncomfortable, the easy, quick fixes are negative, right? These are the easy things. Drugs are easy. They work super well. Punching someone in the face works fantastically, right? Cutting is a way of feeling like you're alive. Why are they wrong? Why are they negative? Because they do us harm. When we can raise kids with a wide repertoire of positive coping strategies, then the path of least resistance goes towards there. If I was able or privileged to come to your spaces on your island nations, I would work starting in kindergarten to make sure that there's a lot of positive coping strategies. So when life gets tough when they're adolescents, there they go, instead of towards the negative, right? It begins by thinking about what a problem is. That blast of stress, a lot of it has to do with how you perceive it. Is it a real tiger, or does it just feel like a tiger? Because once you can change your thinking, you can begin minimizing the stress. We have to be able to tell the difference between the paper tigers and real tigers in our lives, and we have to know that bad things can be temporary. Because when we get into catastrophic thinking, we have a bad experience and we imagine it continuing forever and destroying your lives. Stop. Usually what we're experiencing is temporary, and usually we're imagining the worst. So this is not a talk in cognitive behavioral therapy, but these two bullets basically teach people how to lower anxiety and how to lower depression. An effective stress management plan, which I'm not going to give you all of it, but I'm going to give you access to it, have to have strategies where you take on problems and strategies where you disengage from problems, right? You take on problems by dealing with them, but if you don't give people ways to just avoid them and not thinking about them for a little while, disengagement, they're going to find drugs, because drugs work. You also have to have the emotion-focused strategies that are connect you with other people, and the problem-focused strategies, so the problem isn't there 10 minutes later or 2 hours later to bite you in the butt, right? As best we can, we want to avoid unnecessary and undermining stress. We've got to take away kids' fear of failure, that they're going to destroy themselves by not fitting into a box that other people want them to fit into. Instead, we want to help people understand that this is all that's good and right about you, and you're uneven. People are uneven. You're not supposed to be good at everything. Adolescence is a time where you're supposed to make mistakes, fall down, get back up, and learn what you're not good at. Because when you learn what you're not good at, you can learn to set it aside and focus on those things that you're going to be able to seriously contribute to the world with. So the question the parents always ask me is, where do I set the bar? And the answer is, If this is where your kid is right now, set the bar higher than where they are, but where they know they can reach. If you set the bar too high, no matter how high they reach, they will never get there. They will have anxiety. Set it so that when they stretch, they will feel a sense of accomplishment and reach it. Don't set it too low. If you set it too low, they'll go, do you not know? Do you not believe I can grow? So again, within reach after a stretch. As I said before, adolescence is the time to learn to fail and recover. So if it's about performance, I suggest you don't, with academic performance, tell young people that, this is the way I was raised, by the way, if you don't do well in this test, it's going to ruin your life, right? A little bit overwhelming. How about this? It may feel overwhelming, but this can really hurt you. It's not a real tiger. You'll focus best if you remember that, all right? Don't tell kids just work hard, you'll do well. It's not true. Tell them the truth. People are uneven. Hard work assures you'll learn about your natural strengths, and effort assures you'll learn as much as you can. I want to close off with one big section, because if you're coming as a counselor, you want kids to know that they can go to their parents. If you're sitting here tonight as a parent, more than anything, more important than anything I've said, is that you are that lighthouse that your kid will come to you when they need you the most. What are the issues that make them most likely to come to you? Number one, listen. Listen more than you talk. Their stories will unfold, and they will not feel judged as you're listening, right? And when you're talking, what they're hearing all the time is, oh, I can't say what's really going on because she already has an answer for me, right? Careful with your judgment. I want you to have values. Don't be confused about that. Young people need values. But you never know when a young person is going to need to come to their parent for a very big issue, an issue around identity or a behavior that they wish they weren't participating in. And it's not just about whether or not you judge them. They're paying attention to everything in your life. And if you judge the neighbors, you ridicule people, you divide into an us and them, which I don't know about where you live, but it's really happening in the States. Then what happens is the kids are watching and they're saying, you know what? I can't come to my parent because they reject people easily and I don't want to be rejected. So careful. Next, if you ask young people what they want more than anything, they want someone who has their back. That's someone who's going to be there in good times and in bad times. So be really careful, even when your child's doing incredibly well, that when you praise them, it's not just cheerleading. Because when we cheerlead, there's a because in the statement. I'm so proud of you because. When you do this, I am. When there's a because in the statement, what that means is your child may not come to you when the because is not happening. And that's when they really, really need you. So for all of us, if this was a professional talk, right before this slide, I say this is the single most important thing I teach. Talk about relationships. Talk, even if you're going to praise what they did, end with what matters to me most is that we talk and that you share your life with me. That's what kids need to know, is that what gives us joy, what gives us meaning and purpose as the adults in their life is that they know, is that we care about relationship and that we are being communicated with. So make praise about your relationship. And as I said earlier, friendship is not secure. Go ahead and give every adolescent in your nation a survey. They're all going to tell you they wish their counselors were like friends and their parents were like friends. But if you look at what they live in fear of, it's losing their friends. We have to be much more secure than that, right? Next, remember this. The lie is that adolescents don't care what their parents think and they don't like adults. Not true. They care so much about what we think that they try to spare us. If an adolescent sees their parent as overburdened, they will not say what is going on in their life, right? Because they already know their mom is suffering or stressed, and they will withhold their truths, which is why you take care of yourself as a strategic act of good parenting. And you always let your children know, and I would say this if you're a counselor as well, always let the youths you serve know that you can create bandwidth. And you create it as life gets more complicated by reaching out to people you love, by exercise, through prayer, whatever it is. Let them know you can always make room because your bandwidth will expand because you know how to take care of yourself. Right? So remember this: self-compassion and self-forgiveness is good for you, but it's essential for your relationship with your child, especially when you are most needed. Now, I'd like to offer you some resources, and I know you're going to be able to get this in the chat. I run the Center for Parent and Teen Communication. As you know, I also write books, but everything on the Center for Parent and Teen Communication is free to you. There you will see an enormous, and it is a very multicultural site. You will see that there are all these ways kids can fill out their own stress management plan. There's all of this work on resilience and balanced parenting and on building character strengths and values, right? Remember this: parents matter. If you want, if you have a moment, you can take a picture of this QR code. It'll take you to the site. You can sign up for a newsletter, which you'll receive weekly, all free. We exist to strengthen families. There is no other motivation. Now, as we close, remember this: when we are parenting, we are not just parenting for the moment, we are parenting for decades to come. And how we parent and what we communicate changes the way the child sees themselves forevermore. And ask yourself these questions. Why do we love? We love so our children know they're worthy of being loved today, tomorrow, and forevermore. Why do we respectfully listen? Because when we do, our children learn that they should be heard. Why do we protect? We protect so our children know they deserve to feel safe. And why do we offer relentless support? Because in a world that is topsy-turvy, ever-changing, and divisive, what we need our children to know is that nobody should ever give up on them. I am eager to take some questions.
Good
So we
evening.
have
Two questions. We have a question from Doug. In neonatology, we may use survival without major short-term morbidity or survival without major long-term disability to benchmark different neonatal intensive care units. Specific rates may be adjusted for different demographic factors. Is there any measure related to adolescents which would enable comparison of different populations? Over.
That's a super tough and complex question, not one I expected in a parenting talk. There's not a measure. So the measure that is most often used, that I would trust the most, is really the ACEs score to measure the level of trauma that a human being has been through. But personally, and most people in the American Academy of Pediatrics, prefer us using that only in the context of research. What I prefer is that when I'm working with a human being, I assume that they have gone through difficulties and they deserve, all human beings deserve to be treated in a trauma-sensitive way, meaning loving, respectful, listening, and giving control back to people as much as they can. You know what's interesting to the neonatologists that ask this question, I give grand rounds all over the country / world, and it's often a neonatologist who is the first question. And I would just like to say, I think part of it has to do with the recognition that when a parent comes to parenting unprepared, it has lifelong consequences. And where they get us adolescent doctors involved is with the knowledge that that is especially true of teen parenting. And I have a lot to say, but not for this talk right now, on how to support the young parent to know how much they matter and to become engaged with their neonate or early infant.
Thank you, Dr. Ginsburg. We have another question from Nalini. Can adolescents help parents understand them better? And if so, how?
Absolutely. Yes. Yes. And also yes. Right? I think that I just love that question so much. And the answer is through listening, right? So we have a generational divide, right? When we talk about positive youth development, we often use the term, adolescents are the experts in their own lives. And parents are like, what? Or even professionals are like, what? They don't have the degrees, they don't have the wisdom, they don't have the time. I agree. That's why I started this with a youth development perspective, right? Right? Youth need adults in their life. But what you have to remember is that whatever advice or guidance you get is being filtered by what the kid hears. And what the kid hears is always being placed into the context of their life. So you're giving guidance, you're giving advice, and they're going, but when I sit at the lunch table or when I walk down the street, or they don't know what it's like actually out on in the neighborhood, that it's always being filtered. And therefore, it would be highly effective for parents to say things like, I'd love to give you guidance, but I don't understand your life. Tell me what you think will work. Tell me what you think is the most important thing that I can guide you on. And by that facilitated listening, you will foster open communication. And believe me, you will be invited into your child's life because you're listening as a sounding board. And again and again and again, when kids feel controlled, they push their parents away. I am about intergenerational interdependence. I believe in parents and grandparents and aunties and uncles more than you can imagine. And the key to that is how we play it right? Like we play it as guidance, not control. Even the word discipline, right? People think the word discipline is either punishment or control. No. The word discipline shares the root with the word disciple. It is about guidance in a loving way. And when we offer loving guidance, kids will share their lives with us.
Thank you, Dr. Ginsburg. We do not have any more questions at this time.
And thanks to those who had some comments in the chat. Appreciate it. Thank you. And then just a clarification from Nalini asking how adolescents can help their parents.
I would say it's the flip of what I just said. I was really talking about two-way communication, but parents. So if I'm giving a youth talk, right? One of the points that I will often make to youth is you actually control your relationship with your parents, right? And because parents can only comment on what they know. And youth who withhold themselves, their truths, their values, their journey, their troubles, right? When you withhold all of that, parents are going to see a couple of things. They're going to see your behavior when it's bad. They're going to see your grades, and they're going to see your performance. And then parents are going to comment on those things. Bad behaviors, grades, and performance. And then kids walk away and say, my parent doesn't even know me. They don't know what's going on in my life. So I really appreciate the clarification from Nalini because it's really both sides here. Parents need to know how to get young people to talk and to listen and to optimize their impact. That's what I just said. But what kids also need to know is that if you choose to share your life with your parents, your hopes, your dreams, your troubles, your confusions, your challenges, your parents will surprise you and welcome you into their lives. And by by knowing what matters to you, and therefore you're going to have more time discussing what matters to you. And one other thing for in either side of this coin is you've got to create circumstances which are just low pressure. So many parent-adolescent relationships feel like you have to spend all the time on high-yield thing. Again, performance or behavior. No. Create space for human joy, a sense of belonging, a sense of connection. Go for a hike, go for a swim, have a barbecue, cook, play games, because the real conversations will happen during the low pressure times.
Thank you. That's fantastic. And I think I'm seeing the time here, so I think we'll bring this to a session to a close. I'd like to extend our sincere appreciation to our facilitator, Dr. Kenneth Ginsburg, for sharing his expertise, his experience as a parent, as a teen, and as an adolescent medicine specialist and researcher, and valuable insights with us. And I'm seeing many thank yous in the chat and reactions. Thanks everybody on the screen. To our returning participants, thanks for coming back. And everybody here, we welcome you to join us again. Our next webinar will be on August 4th, and we're grateful for your active participation. I think we're putting a link in the chat to the next webinar, and I will ask one of my colleagues to come on and share a little bit about that specific presentation that's coming up next.
Thank you so much. It was a joy and a pleasure. Thanks for all you do. Bye now.
Hi, good evening. Yes, we will be having our next webinar in the next webinar in the series. It will be on the 4th of August, and it will look at youth mental health matters. What it will do is to look at the challenges and share some available resources and support systems that will help with the adolescents. So we hope to see you then. We hope you'll be able to join us and that you will invite other persons to attend this webinar. We also have a few others coming up in the month of August, and we will share the links with you as time goes by. Thank you.